So Emily, it's just you and me. We'll take it away.
Awesome.
So let's start sort of at the beginning. Why did you want to make the move from a CrossFit style gym to an individual design program?
Yeah. So to start kind of from a little bit before that, so I started CrossFit back in 2010. And then in 2015, my husband and I boyfriend at the time, opened up our first CrossFit gym together. And through those 5 years, a lot of what we saw was, a little bit of pressure in the group class to do what other people were doing, right? So they see the cool party tricks like pistols and handstand push-ups and bar muscle ups and stuff like that. And they're like, oh, like I want to do that. I'm like, right, but can we take some dumbbells and push them over our head? Like, can we get that down well first before we flip ourselves upside down? So seeing a lot of that pressure. So one thing that we did when we first opened up our gym, we actually programmed our daily workout in 4 different levels. So we had function and balance, capacity, drive, and force. So with that, our function and balance is kind of like anybody off the street can come in and do it. So think like ring rows and air squats, right? And then capacity is kind of like your next step. Can you do banded pull-ups and goblet squats? And then capacity, I would say, is kind of more like your general RX CrossFit workout. So you're doing pull-ups and like a moderate front squat. And then we had our force, which would be like your higher level competitor, chest to bars and heavy front squats, in a nutshell version. And what we realized is that even just from those group classes, we could give people a ton more than what they were getting with individualized design. So focusing on the individual in where they needed to improve, whether it was a strength base or an imbalance base or what have you. So we just found that we could offer a lot more switching into the individualized design.
Nice. So for those that may not be as familiar with individual design, what exactly is it? Is it a methodology, a programming structure? Give us a little detail there.
Yeah. So the biggest difference between like group class and individualized design is that it is specifically written for the individual, right? So with individual design, you are taking each person through a full head to toe, left to right body assessment. So we usually do anywhere between 2 and 4 one-on-one sessions. And in these sessions, we sit down, we talk about their goals, where they're at, where they want to go. We take them through movement to see if there are any imbalances or if certain muscles are turned off or if something else is kind of taking over in certain movements. And then from that full assessment, we are designing the program specific to what we found out in that assessment, right? So the beginning is almost like a corrective programming than anything. So we're kind of looking at where they're at and then how can we improve to make their bodies function better toward the goals that they have. And then, with class, we can scale the workout that is generally written.
And is there sort of a client avatar for something like individual design versus small group programming?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think a lot of people can definitely benefit from individualized design, but your avatar, that's going to be very specific to the coach as well, right? So my husband and I are great examples. We have 2 completely different avatars for our personal client. My husband, if you kind of look at his programming book, he programs a ton for high level competitive athletes. Whereas my client avatar is more on the general fitness. I want to look good and feel good naked. A lot of parents who want to be able to keep up with their children or grandparents who want to make sure they can sit down and stand up to play with their grandkids on the floor. So a lot of that client avatar is definitely going to come down to the individual coach and will look different for each person.
I think that's a good point too, because I think if it's something that you really are interested in transitioning to and creating something that's successful, it should be with a group of people that resonate the most with you. So who do you enjoy coaching the most?
Yeah, absolutely. Like what is the situation that's going to fill your cup and make you feel more alive? Because when you feel more connected to it, then both sides are going to benefit even more from that.
Now, once
And
you
staying in your
made,
wheelhouse too, right?
yeah, definitely. You can certainly always grow by going out of your comfort zone for sure.
For sure. Yep.
And when you guys decided, all right, we want to make this overall transition, what was the very first step that you took in that direction?
Yeah, so within our CrossFit gym, what we did first when we wanted to implement individualized design into our programming was we started with a few close clients that we had and kind of had individual conversations with them to see if it was something they were interested in. And then we took them through it, and we actually designed our gym so that way kind of the front 2/3 was designed out for CrossFit class. And then there was a long turf strip that kind of separated the back quarter, which is where we started to implement our individualized design. So that way people could still come in during class times and the two
Got it.
wouldn't interfere with each other. So we started with a very small pool, and just, getting a good grasp of how it would work. And then the more and more that those individuals were improving, and they were still, some of them were going back and forth between the ID and class, and other people saw how much quicker they were advancing and how much faster they were starting to achieve their goals. So more people started to question, like, what are they doing? Like, what is that stuff that you're doing back there? So
Yep.
we started real small, and then it kind of grew from there.
From there. Did you
Yeah.
initially have a set number of, okay, let's just try and get 3 to start with, or it was just, let's talk to a few people, whoever's interested, we'll roll it out and go from there?
Yeah. Yeah, we kind of just started with a small group. I think we may have reached out to, 5 people or so each to see who was interested, because we didn't want to take on too much at once too. We wanted to really be able to focus in and hone in on the education that we were learning. And yeah, definitely starting small is key. And then finding somebody who you already have a good relationship to, because they can give you really good feedback. Because I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I sure have written a handful of programs where after we all did it, you're like, oh, sorry,
Questionable.
guys, like that was not it, right?
Not my best work.
So, exactly. So there's definitely like a major learning curve. So in those first few people, finding somebody who you have a very good, comfortable relationship that you can communicate back and forth, and who will give you constructive criticism too, right? Because if you find
Yep.
somebody who they're like, yeah, that was great. I love doing a mile of burpee broad jumps. Like, whoever thought that was great,
Yeah.
So, but finding the right people to start and learn is definitely critical when it comes to it.
Now, would you have like structured checkpoints through the process where you would sit down and say, hey, how do you think this is going? Do you have questions, comments, concerns, and do it like at a certain cadence, or it was just when it came up?
Yeah, no, that's perfect. So the other great thing with individualized design, like, you're in a constant communication. So every single day when they're going through their program, they're writing in their feedback of what weights they did, how this movement felt. So they can do as much or as little feedback that they want day to day, but we can communicate that. And then we would do, in the beginning, we did more like kind of weekly check-ins. So, whether it was 5 minutes or 60 minutes, depending on, who the client was and how much we could talk, and also whether or not it was my husband or myself, because he could talk to a tree for 7 hours and have no issues. So his were always a little bit long. But but yeah, in the beginning we did more frequent check-ins, just to kind of like, make sure that we're kind of right on target. And then eventually we turned it into once a month. And every client will be a little bit different. Some need, more frequent check-ins, and some people are like, yep, we're good with just kind of the daily feedback back and forth. So that'll kind of fluctuate and change based on, again, right, with ID, everything is completely individualized to the person. So there's really no cookie cutter list to follow. So being adaptable and open in communication with each individual to see what works best for them.
It's a rule of thumb. So what were some of the biggest roadblocks that you would say you encountered as you started to make that transition?
Yeah, I think especially in the beginning, I'm a person who I innately want to help everybody. And I've realized through the years that it's not possible to help every single solitary individual as much as I want that to happen. So for me, right, when we started to talk about ID and educate our clientele, for those people who weren't on board with it, cool, that's awesome. It's not for everybody. I totally get that. So just kind of introducing something new, and the communication back and forth. So one thing that we did in the beginning, so we actually eventually we ended up getting rid of our group model gym, and we moved 20 minutes down the road, and we were only offering ID. So we had 0 classes when we made that switch. So the biggest roadblock that we had with that was just communicating to people like why we were doing that. And holding a town hall was really good for that, right? So we started out with just kind of reaching out to a handful of people, obviously the ones who were already doing ID in our current gym, like talking to them about it first. And
Sure.
that was the easy part. They're already bought in and they love
Yeah.
it, so they're super excited about it. And then you start talking to some of the other people, and they're like, well, I don't get it, I don't understand. So the communication there, and um, you know, just coming to terms that it's okay that not everybody understands or aligns with that, because we're all different, right? So for me, coming to that point and just being okay with that and being able to move forward, and also making sure that those people that were staying back in class didn't feel like we were abandoning them, right? So we really, brought our coaches together, and our coaches who were taking over our group class gym that we were leaving, making sure that there was like a good transition period, so everybody felt like they were still getting what they needed out of it, including coaches and owners as well, right? Because we're all human and everybody needs to follow their heart and what they want. So making sure that everybody was set and understood where they stood, I would say that was probably one of the biggest roadblocks for us, was just being overly communicative and making sure that everybody was kind of set in what they were doing.
Yeah. And I think too, if you're transparent with your members, especially, a group of people that you've built these relationships with, then you leave the door open for whatever might happen in the future. So sometimes it may be not yet, right? And they're
Yep.
just not there yet. It's not
Sure.
necessarily a no, but if you have that communication, I think that you're creating an opportunity for, possibilities in the future, or at least transitioning away or ending that relationship in a really positive place, which I think is good.
Exactly. Yeah, and not burning bridges everywhere you go.
Yep, 100%. I'm curious to know how many members you had when you were with your small group programming, and then once you transitioned over to individual design, what did that look like?
Yeah, so in our CrossFit gym, we had, probably just shy somewhere around 100 members, that we had there. And when we transitioned over, we had roughly, give or take, about 20 to 30 members that had come over to do complete ID and no group class with us.
And is that where you're currently at too in your membership?
So our current gym membership, let's see, we're right now, we are programming wise, I think we're like 50 to 60 members on
Nice.
that. But so our current gym, so when we first opened, we were 100% ID. That was all we offered. We didn't have anything else. We did a little bit of personal training, but we really tried to just get everybody right into ID. And now, over the last 8 years, we have transitioned to, we have 24/7 open gym access. So some people just come in and they just use the facility. And then we have templated programs. So we have designed somewhere between 20 and 30 different programs. So depending on what the person's goal is, whether it's, strength or endurance or, what have you, we can kind of guide them there. And that's more of just like a, hey, I kind of need an idea of what to do. So they'll get
Sure.
3 days of programming, and then they can change and alter that based on what they're looking for. And then obviously our ID, and then personal training as well. So our gym model has definitely changed and grown over the years.
Nice. And how did the pricing structure change with that as well?
Yeah. So my husband and I, when we opened up our gym, neither one of us had another full-time job. The gym was it. So anybody who wanted to pay me money so I could make sure the bills were paid. I wasn't too concerned with my client avatar at that moment. I would pretty much program for anybody who wanted to put a couple bucks in my pocket to pay for rent. And it was good learning experience for me too, especially as we took on more clients. When you're programming for 10 individuals versus 30 individuals versus 60 individuals, it's a completely different game, right? So learning that aspect through and through as well was definitely huge. So when we transitioned our clientele over, they were coming from a CrossFit monthly membership that was somewhere slightly over $100 at the time. And to transition somebody from paying, 125 to say, hey, we're switching over to this place and we're going to over double your budget and you're going to pay me $300 now, right? Completely out of the question. So
Yeah.
we went from, you were paying for group class at 125, like let's start you at 145. So we definitely started on the low end, and we kind of tiered it in like, members 1 through 20 were paying that 149 price. And then once we kind of built that book up and we knew our bills were paid, we could then kind of step it up to the next tier, and we've got a lot more experience under our belt. So our value is going up as well. So slowly over time, we've increased our pricing, and now we are at that $299 price point for individualized design that we wanted. But just having like that slow tier process definitely helped a ton.
Yep. I want to go back a little bit to your group class members and ask, what was some of their reactions when you decided to make this change and you were, going through that transition? What did that look like?
Yeah, exactly what you would expect. Some of them were super, super excited, and other ones were like, I don't even know what you're talking about. Like, I'm good with group class. I just want to show up and hang out with my friends and then go on with my day. So we definitely had a ton of mixed reviews. But again, just finding those people who were aligned with where we were going, and then the ones who were still aligned with their group class, making sure that they were set with our current coaches and the situation that we were leaving behind.
Getting them set up.
Yeah.
Now, did you have a mentor at all during this period guiding you through the process?
Yeah. So through our ID, my husband and I both got the OPEC CCP certification, which hands down, education wise, it was absolutely fantastic. I mean, so I studied kinesiology and nutrition in college. That was my major. And then this was just, it added to everything that I learned there. And then some when it came down to, how to complete an assessment. And then off of the assessment, what information are you taking from there to then start developing the plan for each individual? And then on top of that, probably the number one most important part, like, how do you program? Like, what is program design? And going through all of that. And they even, touch on nutrition and business. And it's really a full, well-rounded practice. And that's a big lesson that we have learned over the years, is to really rely on your community and the people that you know around you. And I mean, when we switched to PushPress for our billing management, that was probably one of the biggest things that drew me into you guys as a company, is how much education and how much care and love there is for the gym owner. right? So like all of the events that you were talking through in the very beginning of this, these fireside chats, the Facebook group that is there for each gym owner, the
Yeah.
weekly coaching or a gym owners call with Dan and Nick, those have been so fantastic, because you may think that you're good, right? You're like, yeah, my gym's good. Like I got this.
Got
And then you
it.
sit in on like one of those conversations and you're like, man, I never really thought about that. Right.
Yeah.
So just having that community behind you, who truly care and support in like what you're doing. And again, everybody's aligned in a different way. And that's what's so great about the push press community, is it's so large that no matter what you align with, I can almost guarantee that there's somebody here that is aligned in that same piece. And that even just having a simple conversation and bouncing ideas back and forth, are just the greatest thing that you can do for your business as a
Yeah.
business owner, in my opinion.
No, I think that's a great point. I think a lot of times as owners and also leaders of the gym and of a community, we start to feel this pressure that we have to figure it all out on our own or come up with the answers on our own. And sometimes that also leads us to get blinders on. And so we may
Mm-hmm.
not, it's just like those coaching calls you're talking about, you log on and sometimes you hear something and you're like, oh, I didn't even think of that. Or you
Yeah,
watch, something in Push Start and it may not resonate exactly with what you want to do, but it, inspires you in some other way. And I think sometimes we have to be willing to take a step back and lean on other resources or people, and also
yeah,
recognize it's okay if there's someone else that's doing it better. Use them as a guide and as a sounding board so that you can continuously evolve and grow within your own business
absolutely.
as well.
100%. I love to surround myself with people who are different than me, right? Because then different and better, right? Because if I'm not growing, if I don't have those people around me to challenge me, then I'm just going to sit stagnant and live life in autopilot, right?
Yeah.
So I couldn't agree with that more. And like you said, and if you don't necessarily connect with what the conversation is, it may spike or flourish a question. And if you have a question, that can just lead to so much more. And then what you do with that question is, how you grow your business. Like one of the coolest things, last week on that coach's call, one of the questions that came up was, losing membership in summertime. This one particular gym owner was saying, all the moms are canceling for the 3 months in summer, and they're like, I'll see you back in September because kids are out of school and
Yep.
life, right?
Yep.
And Nick came up with such a great point, and he was like, well, what if in the summertime, like what if you guys did like a mom and kid or parent and kid class, right? So now not only are you retaining membership, but you're bringing in kids and getting families together and just bringing that whole health and fitness to the next level.
Yeah.
And when that conversation came, it was just like, man, like that's literally the
Light bulb.
greatest idea, right? Like
Yeah.
it's so much more than, yeah, it's so much more. So when you have the opportunity, and I never would have, that question wouldn't have even hit my brain,
Yep.
um, to ask. So being in that group, you're like, man, like, can I implement like some parent and kid family workouts?
Yeah.
Like,
100%.
that's so cool.
Yeah.
Everybody's looking for summer camps and such. Is that something we can implement? So, even something small like that, just even if you don't have a question, just sitting in, it could totally bring anything to light for you.
Yeah. Spark the creativity.
Yeah.
Let me get through a couple more questions and then we'll open the floor up. So, how do you feel individual design ties into the current landscape within our industry?
Yeah. I think it's kind of the next step. I think it's come around a lot more lately. When we back in 2010, when I first started CrossFit, we came in, we warmed up, we did a 10 to 15-minute Metcon, and we said, "Hey, see you tomorrow." And then through the years, like we added in, you know, oh, there's a strength class or an ollie class. So like if you want to get better at your snatches and your clean and jerk, like sign up for the Ollie class. And like, that's how you start to get strong. And then like strength became a piece of the class workout. So now we would warm up, we would do some back squats, and then we would do the Metcon. Right. And then a few years later, it was like, oh, well, now we have open gym, right? Because everybody has different skills. Well, I want to work on my butterfly pull-ups while Jimmy over there just wants to get strong and deadlift as much weight as he can. Right. So we can't facilitate all of that in 1 hour and target everybody's interests. So now what do we do with that dead space in between time? Well, let's just open it up. We'll have a coach on the floor, or, coach eating lunch at the front desk, and it's just open gym, and come in and work on whatever you want. And then I think from there, it's kind of evolved to, hey, I need some extra help. Like, coach, do you think you can, tell me what I need to do to get stronger? Like, how do I lift more weight deadlifting? Because I'm just coming in here and picking weights up every day, but there's got to be a better way. Right.
Yeah.
And then from there, I think it just expanded out to like, hey, I need something that's really specific to me. And I think just like the evolution, right? We kind of find that ceiling, and then we push through it a little bit more, and then we push through it a little bit more. And I think that individualized design is just that next evolution of, what's going to be next, what's on top of that individualized design ceiling. That's where I'm always thinking.
Yeah.
How can I improve? How can I make this better?
What's the next step? For
Exactly.
sure.
Yeah.
So if there's other owners that are thinking about making this transition in some way, what would be your biggest recommendation to them?
Yeah. Number one, go out, do your research, and get educated. Make sure that it is what you want. Make sure you know exactly what it is, and ask questions. Rely on those around you. Reach out to me, reach out to any one of our customer success members here at PushPress. Like, ask questions, do your research, get educated. And number one, as you're doing all of that research, make sure that whatever changes and steps that you want to take, make sure that they align with your true and authentic self. Because if you don't come back to who you truly are, everybody's going to hear and read through your bullshit. Sorry for my language, but but right, like if you don't care, nobody else is going to care either. So just make sure whatever changes you're making, that they align with you and your gym and your culture and what you guys are trying to do, to have one succinct message going forward. Because, in the end, people don't care what you know until they know how much you care. So if you don't care, they're not going to care. So stick to who you are and learn to ask questions.
I love it. That's a good way to finish our question. So let's go ahead. I'll open it up. So if anybody else has questions, or if they want to pick Emily's brain some more about how they made this move, feel free to drop those in to the Q&A box, and we can go through some of those. We'll give it a minute or two. It's crickets so far, so.
Yeah. Give everybody a chance to type. I'm a slow typer.
Are you a hunter and pecker? Is that what it's called?
am.
Yeah.
I've never heard it that, but that makes sense.
Yeah. I'm a little beyond that, but it's not pretty, but I can like move fast.
There you go.
All right.
Yeah. Okay. Great question. How do you onboard a new member? So kind of going back to that assessment question, we typically do one-on-one personal training sessions. So it really gives us a chance to sit down and find out the most that we can about that individual. So we typically, in our first session, I always tell people, I'm like, this is going to be a sit down. So wear your comfortable, normal clothes. We'll just sit down in our office. We have an in-body too, so we'll take them through an in-body. So what that is it's a weighted scale essentially that reads through and tells you your muscle mass in your right and left limb, your water weight, body fat, all of that stuff. So it gives us a full body composition. I won't do that with everybody. It's very dependent on the person, but that will be part of it, right? And just sitting down, learning about their history and where they come from and what they're doing and where they want to go. That's your time to talk about any injuries or any ailments that may be holding them back. And then once we kind of go through that whole first session of just sitting and talking, then we take them onto the gym floor and we go through a series of movements, one to check on their mobility, check on imbalances, find their strength. So again, those movements are going to vary a little bit depending on the individual and which level they are coming in. You know, are they somebody who haven't worked out or just coming off the couch, or are they somebody who's coming from another CrossFit gym? Is it somebody who is an ultra marathon runner and they want to get better in their competition? So that movement will definitely change a little bit. But Matthew, great question. Let's see. Greg, how do you handle pushback from existing clientele? Do you have to let any members go? That's a fantastic question. Yeah. So I like to handle this one in that first assessment question, or even before we even get to that assessment point. When I'm having the conversation, I like to set the stage of one of the things that I need all of my clientele to do is hand me the keys. And like, I will literally have them hand me imaginary keys because I want to take full control. So anytime in those programming, if they do give any pushback, I'll go, right? Like, I got the keys, trust the process, right? So it's all about that communication. I like to have fun with it. But, and as far as letting members go, very few and very rare have I had the need to fire a client per se. But again, just going back to that, being that true and authentic you and who your client avatar is. So will you have moments where you have a client who you guys just don't align and it's not quite there? Sure, that might happen. Can I work with that individual? And, maybe they align better with somebody else on my team. Maybe they align better with my husband or one of my other coaches. But yeah, I think the communication is going to be the biggest aspect with the pushback and making sure that everybody's kind of on the same page. So a lot of front end setup with that one. Let's see, very specific. We've used TrueCoach for almost 10 years and have a lot built up. We have looked at PushPress Train and Coach RX. What do you use with your clients? Do you use one platform or multiple? Fantastic question.
Good question.
So, yeah, I have also used TrueCoach in the past. We've used it for many years. That's what we started with. I like to use multiple. So I use TrueCoach and PushPress Train as well. Like I said, we don't have group class at Mainline Gym, but we do have those templated services. So I will use Train for that. It's easier access for our members because it's all coming from one place. They don't have to go out and get a ton of different apps. With TrueCoach for our high-level competitive athletes, there's a little bit more communication, a little bit more nitty-gritty. Do I think everybody needs that extent? No. But my husband is not the best with change. So we keep him on TrueCoach.
It's a safe space.
Yes. I don't know if I have the time or energy to train him in a new, but again, right? So his client avatar is that high level competitor. So getting down into those really tiny nitty gritty pieces, definitely speaks to TrueCoach. Let's see. Hope that answered your question, Kim. Let's see, Andrew, how far ahead do you need to program to keep up with your ID programs? How much of it is template based, but with tweaks for the individual? Yeah, Andrew, fantastic question. I love that. So again, I think this is going to come down to the individual coach. I have had many conversations with people who do ID, and some people will program out a month at a time. Some people will program out at a week. Some will program out at a couple of days. So what I like to do is I'm a 2-time a week programmer. So on Sundays, let me see, hold on. I have to make sure that I say this the right way. So on Sunday, they will already be programmed out to Monday. So they will get Tuesday, Wednesday, and then rest day on Thursday. So then on Thursday, I would program out the remainder of the week up to Monday. So I like to keep my programs much smaller, because as they communicate back and forth what they're doing, results and all that, that will kind of differentiate what I'm programming in their movements next, if that makes sense. So I personally like a couple, kind of like a half week at a time. But as for template based, all of my individualized design athletes or members, none of them get a template based program. It is all written specific to them and what we found in the assessment. Now, with that different tier that I was talking about, our template service, where it's not individualized design, those I have programmed out, a year or two at a time, because that's just template based. It's something for them to kind of reference to and get an idea or follow. It's much more generalized.
Nice.
I hope that answered your question, Andrew. See, Wendy, can you give an example of what an ID program for someone looks like? Is there a certain amount of times you meet each week? Fantastic question. And this may be a great fireside chat meeting.
Good, because we're always looking for
yes. Yeah,
new
individualized
topics.
design and the programming design is going to look completely different to every single individual. So again, going back to that, there's no cookie cutter piece for any individual. So I have some people who I program 2 days a week for. I have other people who I program 6 days a week for. Some of those people will come in and they'll have 1, 2, 3 superset movements that kind of activate movements. And then they will do a major lift, and then that's it. And then I have other people who have, 16 different movements, because it's way more specific and specialized in what they are. So an ID program can look like anything. I know that is not the answer you are looking for, Wendy. But it is so completely different that it can be anything from super small to super big to general to specific. Really just depending on where the person is coming from, where they want to go and where they're at right now. So meeting the person where they are now is definitely the most important. Awesome. So glad that helps. Yeah. And I think that is a fantastic topic. Coming into the program design, because that can even be more of a conversation, more than just ID, right? But like programming for CrossFit affiliates, like what does that look like? What does, an athlete, like what does that look like in a 12-month scale with everything? And even just like your Gen Pop, like what are, I think, Wendy, I think that's a fantastic conversation. And unfortunately, I don't think we have enough time to go through it today, but
No,
I think
it'll be
we
the
should
next
add
chat.
that one onto the board.
Yeah.
Yes.
We are super close on time. We have 2 minutes, but I had one more question. So I'm going to ask you to answer. It's 60 seconds lightning round here. What do the leads for something like ID versus small group classes, do those look different from the leads that you used to get versus the people that come into the gym now?
Ooh, that's a great question. So right now, right, because we are mainly a 24/7 access facility, we get a ton of, leads who are simply looking for that currently. And we fight up against like the cheaper, like $20 a month Planet Fitness memberships and stuff like that. But as far as when it comes to ID, most of our leads who come in might not even know what that is, but through our conversations, they're like, yeah, like I used to do this and I haven't worked out in years and like I just need some help. And I think a lot of times people will, if they have group, right, then they have personal training. And personal training is a very expensive price tag that most people don't want to invest in. And that's where ID comes in, right? ID, we like to say it's like an affordable version of personal training, right? I am still there with you, writing every thing down that you need to do, from your movement to your reps and your rest and everything like that, but I'm just not physically there with you one-on-one. So as far as what the leads look like, I wouldn't say they're much different. I think it just is a matter
That's
of
interesting.
people often don't know what they want until it's right there in front of them.
That's a good, yeah, true. And when people come in, you sit down and take the time to have a consult with them, then it becomes more prescriptive in terms of what they're
Exactly
looking for,
what they need.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, it's a good point.
Yeah. And that's like one of the
Awesome.
most fun like the most fun parts about this is like with ID, you get to experience so much differentness. So it's not just, oh, hey, yeah, like come check out this class. This is what we're doing today. Like it's not the monotonous of the same thing. I
Yeah.
just remember when I was coaching 8 classes a day, I would tell a funny joke at the 5 a.m. class. And then by like 7 p.m., I told the joke and I'm like, is that even funny anymore?
It's like Groundhog Day.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So
I totally
I
get
always
that.
like to mix it up. That's why I fell in love with CrossFit in the beginning, because every day was different,
Different.
you
Yeah.
know. Yeah. And that's why I really love ID is you get an opportunity to help the individual with specifically what they're looking for. And it's like Christmas morning when they achieve a goal or they do something like, man, never in a million years would I thought I'd ever be doing that. That's like the greatest day of my, like, that makes everything that I do,
Yeah.
all the sweat and tears that go into it, that makes it all worth it.
Wow. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Emily, for taking so much time and
Yes.
walking through this. I appreciate it. I think everyone asked some really great questions. So hopefully everybody got a lot from this. Before we sign off, if anyone wants to connect with any of our customer success specialists, which is myself, Gavin, and Greg, feel free to book one of those calls and we can talk through some of this stuff even more if that's something that you're looking to do. And outside of that, I hope everybody has an awesome rest of your day.
Thanks for
Thanks,
joining, guys.
guys. See ya.